quick. And I am recording. Welcome to the program. This is For the Republic. And Alan had a family thing come up kind of at the last second. So he didn't warn you that he would not be here tonight. And then Tina and Doug. Yeah, I'm not sure what I walked into on this song. I picked up on enough of what was being said, that what it was about. And that's kind of funny because I'm kind of talking about similar stuff tonight, but maybe from a slightly different angle. We'll see. Um, the mRNA vaccine, your food. Well, let's see. I eat locally produced beef, locally produced eggs. Well, working on that. Uh, chicken. So locally caught fish. So when it comes to my meats, my proteins anyway, it's not coming from the store. But anyway, all right. That's one of the things I love about where I live now is I don't have to, because of what I'm surrounded by when it comes to something that how would my our freaky vegetarian eating family members, the few of them that we have, say it. I don't eat things with a face from the store. Would that be the right way to put it? All right. Anyway, hi Alan, how you doing, sir? Hi Shadow artist Tina Anon. The list goes on and on and on. Some of you normally watch me on Fridays, and so we're getting back to the point here. Alan was had a family thing coming up, something about his daughters and his wife, and if he doesn't show up, he would probably no longer be considered a male species of the male gender or something along those lines because of the damage that would be done, something like that. So here I am to fill in for him. It is great to see you. Glad you're here. Jenny is a troll. Okay, then I don't have to answer that one. So we got Ricky and Jenny. Anyway, so and then on top of it, as Alan tells me this weekend, I really need you to take over. No problem. So I was on Constitution Radio on 1490 AM without him, but I had my good friend Dennis, who's always on the show with me. It was the two of us. And normally on Saturday night, I also at 8 p.m. Pacific, I also host a show called Mr. Constitution Hour, which I do on Thursday mornings and Saturday nights. And I did something, I don't know what it was, to my left shoulder. I didn't hit it. I didn't fall. I didn't run into things. I didn't chase any rabbits in traffic, but somehow my shoulder started hurting me. I rolled over wrong in bed, and it made this pop that echoed through the whole house. And so we go to the doctor. Doctor says it's something to do with the ligament. I cannot reach like above my eyeballs without wincing. And so last night, when it came time for Mr. Constitution Hour, I'm like, I can't do this, man. I can't do this. So I canceled the show. And then today I'm like, oh man, do I really want to do this? Well, I said I would. It's not my show. It's Alan's. I said I would. I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm gonna do something, unless I pull a Biden and totally forget where I am, I'm gonna do it. So here I am. Just a Pug says, cool shirt. Catalina Island. Uh, so for my birthday, what was it? About 2 years before we moved up here, so about 4 years ago, we went to Catalina Island. I grew up, born and raised in Southern California, and never once in my whole life had gone to Catalina Island. So my wife says, Doug, I've got a birthday present for you. And so we got on one of those ships that, you buy a ticket, it cruises over there, you cruise back. It's a, you know, what was it, like a cattle? It's almost like a cattle ship, man. It's people are packed on it like cattle, and you kind of stand there. And what does it take? About 20 minutes, something like that, to get there. And then we spent the day, got a hotel, stayed the night, and the following day came back. Right? One night or 2 nights? 2 nights. Yeah, it seemed like that was right. And so this is one of my
Gibbs.
souvenirs from that trip. Thank you. And one thing I appreciate is a good steak dinner. And it's frustrating because to get the real top quality meat where it melts in your mouth and you get the right service and all that, you got to spend a bundle. And I hate that. I don't like spending a bundle, usually because I don't have a bundle to spend. But we went to a place there to eat, and I spent a bundle. And it was the best, well, the second best. So there's a place in Temecula I went to was actually about as expensive. Second best steak dinner. The steak was it a fillet? I think it was a fillet. But anyway, it was perfect. And so that's my main memory. That's my main memory is what I ate. But we had a lot of fun. We the Chicago Cubs way back long because I guess Wrigley had bought the island, and so he's like he has a whole island, so he might as well have his team practice there. So the Cubs used to practice there, and so there's all kinds of stuff about that and all that. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I enjoyed Catalina Island. It was a lot of fun. It's definitely worth a visit. Everybody in California at least, but if ever you're in Southern California, like, hey man, I want to do something that's just crazy, unique, go to Catalina Island. It's cool. The only place I've ever been to that kind of had a similar feel was Mackinac Island. There, between the two Michigan peninsulas there. Mackinac is a lot more back in time feeling, though. Now, on Catalina Island, uh, in order to have a car there, there are residents that live on Catalina, but in order to have a car there, you have to get a special permit. Very few cars. Most people drive around golf cart. And it's gas golf carts because everything's so hilly. Electric golf carts don't have the stamina or the oomph. And California has been going so against everything with gas engines that now you can only buy electric golf carts. And so on Catalina, I don't know if they got an exception or what, because all of them are gas. And so I'm wondering what's going on there with that. Something I've always wanted to look into. So anyway, Sunny Daisy says, "Oh, I'm trying to work the knot out of my right shoulder." Yeah, and mine isn't a knot. I turned wrong. I rolled over wrong. Something crunched, and I've always considered myself a relatively healthy guy. Um, I am overweight. I'm about probably 30 pounds heavier than I would like to be. And that happened in my mid to late 40s. You get older and you eat the same, but your physical exertion reduces, your metabolism changes, but you're not smart enough to change your eating habits. And then suddenly one day you look down and your feet are gone. When I was a young man, I played baseball, till I got to high school. Then I saw the competition and I didn't play baseball anymore. I played basketball with my friends like almost every day. And I mean, I would play for hours on end. I had the stamina. I was a cross country runner. I ran a handful, a few marathons. I, in a sense, was an athlete. Messed up my knee a little bit when I was 19. other parts with injuries. Hurt my shoulder actually coaching baseball. The pitching machine was not working at the little league field, and so I had to throw pitches to my kids, and I literally threw my shoulder out, and it's never been the same since. So, but otherwise, I've got issues. We all have issues, right? And the older you get, the more appealing things that say for fast relief become in the store. You start filling your cart with stuff that says for fast relief as you get older, and and so I've always considered myself, healthy though, even though I've got my aches, I got my pains, I got my whatever. But man, when this happened, I'm like, holy moly, what, uh, what, what hell is this? It really hurts. What? What's the topic? No, I just right now because you gotta realize I didn't plan for today's show, so right now I'm just kind of talking. But I do have things planned. Yeah, what do you want to talk about? You want to join me? You want to? Oh, you're in your pajamas?
Good.
Put on a nice top, come over. Mrs. Constitution, Virginia, a lot of these people, they know you from Friday. You're good? You want to be a part of the show? You don't want to come over and sit next to me? You can tell that I'm so lazy on today's show that I didn't even elevate. I normally have my computer elevated and then my mic a little elevated. And so instead of my ceiling above me, you see the top line pretty much of the bookshelves. And I do that on purpose. I got all this lighting going on and stuff. I mean, I literally, because the shoulder isn't it's bothering me, and I didn't want to do a show last night. I'm literally like, okay, I'll do the show. But yeah, range of my range, yes, Sunny Daisy, my range of motion is messed up too. But like I said, down here, I'm okay. If I want to reach forward, like when I play pool, you get that arm out there and it just it hurts. If wash my hair, you know, unscrew a light bulb, not happening right now. Not with the left hand anyway. So anyway, here's the reason I brought it up though, because I got a kick out of this. And Virginia, she goes into my appointments with me. And we go to each other's doctor's appointments. So when she goes see a doctor, I'm there in the room. When I go see a doctor, we do everything together. I mean, as a couple, I guess we're just a couple of old farts. But what? She says, "Hey, I'm not an old fart. Okay, I'm an old fart. She's a young fart." So, so we go. So I go into the doctor's office. All right, you're just young then. Happy wife, happy life. Got to be nice to her. But anyway, so we go in there and and they do the usual, they ask your height and I tell them my height and ask my, and then they tell me to get on the scale and I tell them my weight. And when I get on it, I mean to the fraction, I'm right. I know I pay close attention, to the body. And and so and then I go in, and they do the blood pressure. My blood pressure was actually higher than normal. Usually I'm like 117 or 119, right around there, over like somewhere between like 78 and 82. So my blood pressure is typically really good. But it was the first number was, what was it, like 132 or something like that. It was a little higher than normal. Second number was like 84. So it was a tad, and I'm in pain. I'm hurting. So of course it's up a little bit. And Sunny Daisy says, "Hey, yeah, women don't like being called farts." But anyway, so then the doctor, and this is the urgent care doctor, and you got to realize where I live, it's a small town. So if you're going to see a doctor, unless you're paying a lot to see one of the handful of privates out here, everything is at the same place. The daily doctor, the 24-hour urgent care doctor, the X-ray, the MRI, the emergency room. It's all in the same place, but it's not a hospital. It operates like a hospital, but it doesn't have any beds or anything, so it's not technically a hospital, and it just does everything. One place. And so I'm in the system, and I'm there every once in a while. I got my doctor isn't even a doctor; he's a nurse practitioner. Very few doctors in the area, and the ones that are, they're like I said, private doctors, and you're gonna pay. Um, and most of them are either physician assistants or nurse practitioners. Most of the providers, which is fine. If anything, they're better sometimes. And so the lady, she's a PA, comes in and she's asking me all these questions because this is urgent care. She don't know who I am. I'm not a regular patient of hers. So and it's over my shoulder. So she's asking me questions also about my shoulder. What's your range of motion? Da 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 da. Are you right-handed or left-handed? And I said both. She says no. It has to be one or the other. Which is it, right or left? I said I'm both. She says no. What do you do most things with? Both. What do you write with? Either. And she's like getting frustrated with me. So I'm not saying right or left. That's okay. Well, to be honest with you, I'm naturally left-handed, but I was taught a lot of things right-handed. So everything I've naturally learned, I do left-handed. A lot of the things I've been taught, many of them I do right-handed, but I've learned over my time to do them left-handed also because I'm naturally left-handed. When I was in school, a teacher yanked the pencil out of my left hand, made me write right-handed. She said, "So you're right-handed? So you're right-handed?" No, and it kind of freaked her out. I'm ambidextrous in most things that I do. Now there are a few things I have to do a certain hand. If I shoot, I have to shoot left-handed. I can't hit the broadside of a barn shooting right-handed. If I have a rifle, it has to be left-handed if I'm going to hit when I'm shooting at. I eat left-handed. But like if I'm hammering, and I typically like to hammer with my right hand, but I can hammer left-handed just as almost about as effective. It's almost the same. When I play pool with my wife, I will only because I was taught to throw right-handed, I will break right-handed, but I can play pool either-handed. And I've messed with people before because I'm actually not too bad left-handed, and I'd be at like a place, billiards place, and I'd be playing left-handed. Some guy would be like, "Yeah, hey man, you want to play for money?" I don't know if I'm good enough. $10. So I'll play. So I'm playing them left-handed, and then he'd be like, "Triple or nothing." He let me, he let me win. Give me a chance to get my money back. Triple or nothing, or quadruple or nothing. I can't remember what it was. Well, yeah, no problem. And then he says, "Well, you break," and then I switch over to the right-handed. And I start playing right-handed. So what's this? Oh, I'm actually right-handed. And then it freaks him out, and then I beat him anyway. Um, I do stuff like that sometimes just for the fun of it. Now I bowl right-handed. I can't bowl left-handed, and I typically throw right-handed. I've never mastered throwing left-handed. But for the most part, I'm ambidextrous on just about everything. So when people says what handed I am, I usually say both. And I yeah, same thing, Mr. Dynamex. I can't hold a fork properly with my right hand, and if I try to eat right-handed, I dump it. I mean, I can't seem to hit my mouth. Left-handed, I'm naturally left-handed. I eat left-handed. When I'm cooking, I stir left-handed, but I flip patties either hand. But stirring right-handed doesn't feel right if it's counterclockwise. But if it's clockwise, like if I'm whipping something, then right-handed works, and that's really weird. But anyway, so I just thought it was funny because, and the reason why, and here's the reason why I bring this up. We get so caught up on the way things should be that we forget that sometimes it not being the way it should be is sometimes okay. And we got caught up in this binary way of thinking. Now, I don't want to sound like a libtard, leftard, whatever you want to call it. I'm not, but sometimes things aren't binary. Now, when it comes to the sexes, I believe binary. There's boys and there's girls, male, female. It's one or the other. There is no any otherwise. There are some things that have to be binary. There are certain rights and wrongs on certain things. Um, but But a lot of things often the question is, yeah, and I box left-handed naturally, but I can hit as hard either way. Basketball, I can shoot right-handed or left-handed, but I lay up better left-handed. But anyway, all right. So we get into this binary thinking, and the problem with the left is they're binary when they shouldn't be, and they're not when they should be. They do it exactly opposite. Sometimes there is a right and wrong. Sometimes there is, and sometimes there is what he said, what she said, and then what really happened. Sometimes it's something else. And also we have to remember every person. Yeah, I'm pretty good at multitasking too, Alan. Um, but anyway, so so yeah, I bait pool sharks. That's it, Panerific. Pool sharks out there try to get me, and then I mess with them. I also have so my wife has a psychology degree. I helped her with her homework. I helped her study for her test. I wrote all of her papers. So I feel like the degree's mine too. So I kind of have a psychology degree, but also I kind of think in that way anyway. So Virginia got mad at me one time because I was when I was in the United States Navy after I had my head injury, and then I came back, and then they were having me see a psychiatrist. They were claiming I had a personality disorder. Well, my personality disorder, I'm naturally kind of different. And then I start messing with a psychiatrist. You remember that? Remember when I started messing with a psychiatrist? But anyway, so yeah, I'm funny that way. But anyway, all right. So I'm funny that way.
Oh, I was saying, oh.
No, I'm sometimes funny too. And she says that wasn't funny. I said I'm laughing. That's all that matters. So I think I'm funny. So I'm funny.
Oh,
But anyway, get back to this. So and so I look at the whole world that way. I am never satisfied with the answer being what I see, but I don't necessarily think the answer is what a conspiracy theorist might say or an expert might say. Sometimes I'll look at something at a totally different angle. So, and sometimes because of that, I'll see things nobody else sees, and then later on, it pops up that that's what it was. And so, and so I want to give you an example of that since we're on this now, since we're chatting about this. So let me see if I can find get all these windows here. I probably shouldn't, but hopefully it's not interfering with me doing the show because I got like so many tabs up. Usually I close all the tabs, but half the stuff I want to use. So if it acts weird because of bandwidth, that's probably why. So I got to thinking about Platner, Graham Platner. And what was that? He's full of himself. Well, he's a real piece of garbage. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, in the state of Maine, uh, North Massachusetts, for us historians, say that to a person from Maine and see how mad they get. But so, and I watch things. I've been into politics my whole life, and so I notice things. I pay attention to these things. And I'm watching this Graham Platner situation in the state of Maine. And Graham Platner is running for Senate. And Susan Collins is the senator. And she's a Republican because there's an R after her name. There's nothing really conservative about her. On rare occasions, she'll agree with the GOP. And more often than not, when she does agree with the GOP, I don't agree with the GOP. um, but she voted for impeaching Trump, so she's not. So they're like, oh, we really need this seat for the Democrats. The Democrats already have that seat. It's just in the name of a Republican, but that's okay because Fetterman crosses over enough that they kind of cancel each other out. So, so Platner is running against her, and in the primary, his only opponent was I think the governor of Maine, and the Democrats decided Platner's the guy, so she more or less threw in the towel, quit funding, whatever. And then when it turned out he's a real creep, Then she decided, hey, I'm still on the ballot technically, but it was too late. And so, and Graham Platner, I mean, he's not just a creep. I mean, he's a creep 10 times over. He represents something that I've never, I mean, he's a creep. He's a communist. I think he's a fascist. He's he's all of the things. Here's what's funny about it is in many ways he represents all of the things that the left has been accusing Trump of being. He is. He truly is. He's truly the fascist, commie, authoritarian, wish he was king, uh, misogynistic, woman hating freako. And and I'm watching this, and I'm like, I mean, no candidate this bad. I don't understand how it is that this candidate passed the smell test. And so, who was it? Can't remember. I want to say it was Jesse Waters. I think it was Jesse Waters had a video on the show of the two people. Oh no, it was Gutfeld. Gutfeld had a video of the two people who vetted Platner before the Democrats, got behind him, before his candidacy was launched, and blah 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 blah. And it was an Asian woman who really didn't say anything, and then this guy who sounded like a transsexual version of the Valley Girl, and in his voice, I mean, it was just creepy listening to him. He was hitting different pitches that I couldn't hit if I tried, in weird kind of tones. And anyway, and they're like, "Oh well, we did not see any of these things in this candidate." They denied ever even seeing that Platner had these problems that he was. And so I'm like, okay, the guy is like, he makes almost Swalwell look close to normal. I mean, this guy's so bad. You know Swalwell, right? Those of you paying attention, the one who wound up pretty much getting dumped by the Democratic Party. I think they had these blackmail files on him anyway. They knew about him being the way he was, and the moment he decided that he was going to jump into the governor's race in California, which would split the Democratic vote enough that where Chad Bianco and Hilton could have won, and the both of them would have gone in November. So they decided they had to get rid of him, and he wouldn't step down. So they ruined his life with all they knew about him. They put it out there. That's what I think happened to Swalwell, personally. And they got what they wanted. Chad Bianco then dropped because the Democratic vote wasn't being split as much because they have a jungle primary out in California. And so now, and they thought they'd get Tom Steyer in there too, but Hilton still beat him. I don't. Hilton's kind of a odd bird for me. Um, Conservatives in Britain aren't conservative, and he was a conservative in Britain, and so, and he has there's some things questions he hasn't answered, but at the same time, he's still better than any Democrat. And the reason why he's kind of out there high on the list is because he spent so much time on Fox News, I think. But I don't consider him as good of a candidate as Chad Bianco. Chad Bianco had a lot of attacks on him that a lot of my allies believe that weren't necessarily true. The left is amazing at how they attack. But anyway, so in California, it looks like it's going to wind up in November, or Democrat versus Republican. It's usually Democrat versus Democrat. That's what the Democrats do in California with their jungle primary. And so they got rid of Swalwell. They ruined him. All of his secrets. He was already ruined. He was already a creepy piece of garbage. But he was exposed for what he really was. But then comes along, Platner in Maine, and I'm like, man, he makes Swalwell look good. This guy is so they let him in without noticing, either because they did notice, they hoped nobody else would, like they did with Swalwell, because he's saying the right thing, or this is deliberate. They wanted to see how far they could push it. They wanted to get a guy out there that was so bad, so rejectable. They're using them to test the waters. What are the boundaries of acceptable candidates? And what are the boundaries of their radical ideology? Because it's the perfect place to test it. Because if they lose it, they still have Susan Collins, which is a Democrat in Republican clothing. So they want to see how many votes can they get with someone this bad. In other words, how effective is their all Republicans are evil, all Republicans are racist, and it doesn't matter how bad the Democrat is, if he has the radical commie message, you should still vote for him, ideological capture kind of mindset. How much, how far have they gone to convince the left-wing nutcase voters that someone like Platner is still better than any Republican? And like I said, the strategic context to me is unmistakable. Again, Maine Senate seat is held by Susan Collins. And so if you were to do a test like this, if you were to purposely put someone like Graham Platner in there, just purposely, because you want to see. If you want to test the water somewhere, what better place than Susan Collins' seat? It's the perfect laboratory for such an experiment. Because remember, Collins breaks with the Republicans on key issues, including voting to impeach Trump. So, from the Democratic establishment's perspective, if Platner doesn't win, they don't lose the seat to the Republicans. Collins is practically already a Democrat. They haven't lost a reliably Democratic vote because she often votes with them, especially when it comes to opposing Trump. So let's test the waters. Let's get the biggest nutcase retard, get the craziest, misogynistic, lying, deceiving, communist, fascist guy with the most baggage, sexting women while he's married, sexting girls that might be not adults, talking about things I won't talk about on this show that he's done in his life. You got the tattoo, you got all of this. Guy that calls soldiers fat, lazy trash, while at the same time leveraging his own military service for political gain. I mean, he's not merely a Democrat with a few policy disagreements with the mainstream or a little wacko on some of the things because he's a Democrat. I mean, this guy is a self-proclaimed communist with a history of character issues that would have had him disqualified in any previous era faster than my wife responded when I called her an old fart. His baggage includes allegations of Nazi imagery, sexting with women other than his wife, potential of young girls, domestic abuse accusations, mocking a Purple Heart recipient and other servicemen in ways that violate even the most basic code of military camaraderie. The hypocrisy is staggering. Yet Democratic voters are standing by him. And the Democratic Party, while some of them look like they smell something funky in the air, but they still support him, are supporting him. They claim he was properly vetted. Mountain of evidence says otherwise. They tell us this all tells us also a few things about Democrats. One, their political aims outweigh any morality or decency anyway. Power is more important than doing what's right, being a reasonable person. And Platner is so ridiculous as a candidate that I strain brain cells believing that they are actually serious about him as a standard bearer. Are they really that wacky? Are they putting something out so wacky they're seeing what they can push? Or maybe they're just trying to normalize. You put it out so crazy that this gets normalized. Hey man, this wacky communist ain't so bad when compared to Platner, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod. I mean, radical movements, communism, fascism, any type of dictatorship, oligarchy, you go back in history, even before fascism, communism was a thing, and you had the utopianism, you had the empires, you had, the Roman Caesars, you had different other systems in history. Radical movements like this historically do have used figures to normalize increasingly extreme positions and personalities over time. What seems unthinkable today becomes tomorrow's new normal through incremental testing of boundaries. Is that what Platner is? With his maximum character baggage and radical ideology, testing the boundaries, is this a way to make something so unthinkable that what you thought was unthinkable now is normal? I think putting him out there as their candidate serves that function perfectly. And it's interesting to me because in America, character has always been a big deal, right? I mean, what was Martin Luther King Jr.'s message? Now, granted, I think he was a socialist commie too. Some things he got right, a lot of things he got wrong. Um, but I understand the time and all that. But what is the most famous quote to come out of Martin Luther King Jr.? It's not about the color of the skin, it's about the quality of the character of the person, right? So character is more important than anything, right? We expect people to have good character. We want our politicians to have good character. If we can't trust them with their own lives doing reasonable things, how can we trust them as a desk jockey in the legislature, right? I mean, even sports. Oh, we're watching. My wife and I are big NFL and football fans in general. We just watched the UFL championship game yesterday. Had a lot of fun with it. If it's football, we're probably watching it. Love college football, spring league football, NFL, whatever. Yes, I know you guys hate the NFL because of the kneeling and all that. I don't care. It's about the game on the field, and I'm going to support the players that aren't idiots and didn't kneel. Like Derek Carr is one of the guys I supported. He refused to kneel. He wore his Christian, on a sleeve. He just there was no doubt who he was, what he was, and I'm starting to see that more and more from players. But so we're watching the draft. Yes, my wife watches the draft and the combine with me. She loves football. We're watching that game yesterday. And so right now my office is I haven't built it yet. We moved up here 2 years ago and we live in our living room. I mean, we sleep in our bedroom, obviously. We cook in our kitchen, but I mean, unless we're in the game room playing pool or something like that, uh, we're in the living room. My desk is in the living room. What you're watching, I have three bookshelves behind me, between me and the hallway that goes to the kitchen and the bedroom and the bathroom. So those bookshelves not only are to look good, but to block the view of what of the of my bedroom, which is at the end of the hall, which doesn't have a door because my dad, who owned this house before he died, was a bachelor and living by himself. So what did he care if he had a door on his bedroom? And so we're watching the game, this UFL championship game last night, and so my desk is on the left side of the living room, and I'm facing a window, out to the front of the house. I got a window on my left side. I normally have the blinds closed. You'll notice that my side of the face here is a little bit more lit than usual. It's because I have the window open. It's a nice day, nice breeze coming in. I got the blinds open, pulled down or pulled up, depending on which one. And the windows are open, breeze coming in. Right, it's a nice day. After we got pretty hot yesterday and the day before, got all the way up to like the 80s. For us, that's hot. And Now it's its usual low to mid 60s. And actually, down in town, it's like 56 right now. But anyway, so we're watching, and her desk, because our desks are in our living room right now, because we don't have an office right now. And so I've got my desk chair I'm sitting in. She's got hers. Hers faces the same way. She's on the other side of the room. She moves her chair from the desk to the middle. And every time a big play comes up, she is scooting her chair closer. By the end of the game, she's like 6 feet from the TV, cheering and getting into it. My wife loves to watch football. And it's funny because when we got married, while she would go to high school football games, I would see her there. It wasn't her thing. She went because her friends. Now, me, I was all into football, plus also like my senior year, I escorted one of the homecoming queen candidates during halftime, stuff like that. So I was pretty involved with school, and I went to football games because I enjoy football. Plus, also, I was friends with some of the football players. I was friends with a lot of other guys. I was a varsity cross country stuff like that, and a lot of my friends would go stuff like that. So I was more involved in football than she was. When we got married, we went to the same high school. For those of you who don't know this, we're high school sweethearts. I met her Halloween my junior year, um, and and my senior year she had graduated. She was a senior when I was a junior. I met her senior year, my junior year, Halloween. Uh, we fell for each other instantly. Had our first kiss that night, but then she wouldn't date me because I was only a junior. But then she would sabotage any relationship I tried to have with anybody else because her quote, "You're my man." I find this out later when I can't figure out why I couldn't attract a woman at all during my junior year. And then by my senior year, I was going out with her. So my dating other women stopped the beginning of my junior year, after the beginning of my junior year when I met her pretty much. So I had a short dating life. But anyway, so so she wasn't into football as much. When we got married, sports wasn't her thing. I've always been all about, man, I used to go to Angels games when I was a kid. I remember my friend Nacho and I, man, we went to a bunch of Angels games our like junior, senior year. And it was like $6 to sit right behind the dugout. Of course, you had like 6,000 people in the stadium too because the Angels suck so bad. Um, Sort of like right now, today. 20 years ago, they were good, but then Artie Moreno bought the team and he's face planted them into the dirt ever since. But anyway, that's a different story. So, baseball fan, football fan, I'll go to hockey games. I kind of follow hockey. I'm not real big on hockey. I used to love the NBA. Used to watch the Lakers way back when it was, Magic and Kareem and all that jazz. Man, I was worthy and I was all into the Lakers, and I even didn't mind the Lakers too bad when it was Kobe and Shaq. But then, ever since then, two things happened in the NBA. Number one, they stopped playing defense, and number two, they also all became a bunch of thugs. I'm not interested. I watch a lot of college basketball, so it's like my wife just never was into sports, Then about 3 or 4 years ago, well, no, I'll take that back. Back in the early 2000s, I got her to watch some baseball with me, and the year she really started getting into baseball with me was the year the Angels won the World Series, 2002. And we went to a lot of their games that year. It was a lot of fun. It was a good team. So she's always kind of watched baseball with me, but she never got into it as much as she did that one year where the Angels went all the way. And then football, about 3, 4 years ago, I got her to start watching football with me, I started explaining the game. She didn't fully understand much of it, and so we watch the games together. And now she's gotten to the point where she's such a football fan, it ain't funny. I mean, in this UFL, the spring league, last year we saw the Birmingham Stallions in Birmingham, Alabama. This year we saw the Orlando Storm play in Orlando. We've gone to those games. Last November we went to a Raider game in Las Vegas. A lot of fun. Took her to a Chargers game against the Buccaneers like a few years before we moved up here. So, I can't remember when that was. That's actually more than a few years ago. But anyway, but she's kind of gotten into football. So she's gotten to the point where she watches the draft, she watches the combine the last few years, last 2 to 3 years. So last year's draft, not this year's, not the one where the Raiders took Fernando Mendoza and then Ty Simpson with the Rams and all that. Not this year's. Last year's draft, where we're watching the draft, and one of the storylines was fascinating to watch. A guy named Shedeur Sanders. And for those of you who are not into sports, not into football, Shedeur Sanders is the son of Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders is considered one of the greatest football players of all time, not because he was awesome, he was, but he was also able to play like offense, defense, baseball, football. He played baseball the same, Bo Jackson, but not as big. And probably a lot more talented in certain aspects. And so Deion Sanders now head coach of the Colorado football team. And so his son, Shedeur, and his other son, I can't remember his first name, he went to, I think, Tampa and wound up getting kicked out off the team for getting into a fight on the field or something like that. But anyway, so Shedeur Sanders had a fantastic football career at Colorado. The team didn't do great, but he did. Quarterback. So everybody's expecting him to go like first round, second round in the draft. And we're watching, and he's dropping round by round. And he didn't get picked till like the fifth or sixth or seventh round, something like that. It was real late in the draft. And everybody's like, whoa. I mean, everybody was passing up on him. Why? Why did this talented young man fall to later rounds? And there's a lot of players that go undrafted that you expect to be drafted, and they go undrafted. Why? Well, as you got to listening to the conversations, the murmurs, the sportscasters giving their opinions, and my own opinion of what I was watching and what I saw of the young man, it came down to lack of character, which brings us back to Platner. The whole reason for all that football stuff was this part right here. Shedeur Sanders, despite the fact that he was considered, for the most part, one of the top quarterbacks going into the draft, got chosen in a later round, and then he got chosen by a team, the Browns, who had already picked another quarterback ahead of him, Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback for Oregon, who a lot of people didn't even consider to be as good as Shedeur Sanders. But he fell drastically because of character flaws. Football is funny because it is the exact opposite of the world of leftism. If you have bad character, you fall in the draft. You only do well if you do well. Merit. Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter where you came from or who you are. Sometimes they are discriminatory against small colleges, but even guys from small colleges, wind up doing well and shock everybody. And even though Max Crosby of the Raiders is a great example. Who was that running back that did really well for the Chargers? Those LaDainian Tomlinson. came from a nothing school, and the guy was like, superstar. Tom Brady wasn't exactly a big school guy, I don't think, and he got picked in the later rounds. But anyway, it's a merit-based sport. You better perform. You better do well. You're not going to get special treatment because of who you are, where you came from, or whatever. And Shadur Sanders is a great example. Because of his dad being Deion Sanders, he's practically football royalty. But he had some flaws in his character. He walked around in this narcissistic, nose in the air, chest out manner, and thought he was God's gift to football because of who he was and so they're like, oh, we pass. We want someone that's not going to come in with this attitude. We need someone who's going to accept if they're at the bottom of the totem pole that pro football is faster than college football. They're going to shut up. They're going to listen. They're going to learn. They're going to develop. And when we're ready to put them in, they'll go in. I mean, there was talk with Shador once he was on the Browns as a third stringer that he might even wind up with the Canadian Football League or something. Character matters. Character matters not just in the NFL draft, though. Political representative, if they have deeply concerning character flaws, I'm not going to look the other way because he might have a message popular to me. But the Democrats seem to think that if the message is popular and you hate the other side enough, then it doesn't matter how deeply concerning the character flaws are. It doesn't matter how screwed up the person is, how disgustingly creepy they are. If they have a popular message and, oh, by the way, they served in the military. Don't get me wrong, I served in the military. That's a good thing. But they seem to think their message and their narrative and their programming of our younger generation is more important than someone's character. If the NFL didn't want to deal with Shadur Sanders because of character flaws, why in the world should we put up with someone with worse character flaws as a senator in the United States Congress? And so Purple Heart recipient Ted Daniels, who he attacked, says that voters simply should consider some basic character questions. If you want someone to represent you, then just ask some simple questions. Would you let somebody like Graham Platner date your daughter? My wife's in the garage right. Hell no. Would you let somebody like Graham Platner around your wife? Would you let somebody like Graham Platner babysit your kids? Right? These are the type of questions we should be asking. Go ahead. He wouldn't be allowed to babysit your dog? So why do we want him in Congress or in the U.S. Senate in this case? He doesn't have the character to serve. He doesn't have the character to spend time on my property here without me keeping an eye on him. Make sure he's not chasing the little animals behind the trees or something. These are the type of character judgments we routinely make in other contexts. These are the kind of character judgments we make with an NFL draft pick, our neighbors, whether or not we like a teacher for our children, But yet we're not going to make these character judgments for a person running for office who's going to represent us. And the fact that the Democratic leaders still support such a candidate, despite his history of mocking wounded soldiers, his alleged sexting scandals, and other character issues, suggest either a shocking lack of judgment or a cynical calculation that winning outweighs all other considerations. Either possibility should concern voters across the political spectrum. And this isn't about one Senate race in Maine. It's about what we're willing to accept from our political leaders and what message we send by overlooking fundamental character flaws in pursuit of political advantage. If the Democratic Party can successfully run a candidate with Platner's history and character issues, what's next? Where do we draw the line? And what else have they thrown at us and we don't even know? We don't even know what the people are, what kind of people they are. We're finding out some of them now, right? The reason why and what cracks me up about the lefties now in the Democratic Party is all about projection. They project so much, and they've gotten their followers to project, believing the projections, believing the garbage. You ever heard these people describe President Trump? Well, he's this authoritarian pedo wannabe king. Wait a second. Where do you get the pedo from? Well, Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein files and witnesses have exonerated Trump on that. It's the Democrats that are all throughout those files. And then they get their little peeps who've been trained to believe this garbage. They're little, they're little, they're little soundboards that record and then repeat. All right, so chat room is saying the feed is pausing and unpausing. So I'm going to check just to make sure it ain't me. So let me close a few windows here because, like I said earlier, I have a few tabs open, and I thought it might interfere. I was kind of lazy, didn't spend a lot of time getting ready. So maybe it's me. The glitching might be me. So I closed a bunch of tabs. Hopefully that'll fix it. Let me know if it's still glitching after I close all those tabs. Hopefully that solves the problem. I have actually a pretty powerful computer here, but you have too many windows up, too many files open. It can start glitching, to say the least. All right. So, and get back to my point here. Oh, Sharia's Burry says fine on Vaughn. So, I don't know. All right. So when it comes to Platner, my ending statement is what a mess we've gotten to here in America. We have a party, a political party in America that has what's the right word? Has so taken over our national consciousness that we are letting a creep like Platner. And now this goes back to what I was trying to talk about at the very, very beginning. So and sorry folks, so the Rumble chat room is saying there's some glitching going on. Vaughn is saying, nah, it's fine. All the different rumbles are freezing up also. Okay, well, I'm recording this, so whole I'm typing in the chat for those of you wondering why I suddenly stopped talking. I'm recording this so the whole video will be available on my video page later tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest. Douglas V. Gibbs.com/video. And make sure that comes up properly. Yes. Okay. So basically, I told the chat room. So sorry that it's glitching. I did things on my end to make sure the live feed is down. All right. Well, X is doing okay right now. Vaughn is doing okay. The Rumble feed is not playing. It is now. I've got it on, and I'm watching my delayed self do whatever it does. So, oh, and there it froze. Yep, Rumble is freezing. Okay. So it is what it is. I'll keep on going. And hopefully. Anyway, all right. So now the UFC thing apparently is going on at the White House too. I wanted to watch it, but I'm doing this. I'll do this anyway. But you can go douglasvgibbs.com/video, douglasvgibbs.com/video. All of my videos wind up on that page. And I have told Alan to start sending me the videos for the Republic. I didn't get it in time. I have to have him resend it, the last one to me. I'm gonna start putting those also. But whenever I do for the Republic by myself, I put them on there. I have my Mr. Constitution Hour, my radio program in at KMET goes on that page. The videos I do with War Hamster goes on that page. So if I've done a video, it should wind up on douglasvgibbs.com/video. So there you go. All right. Jenny is a bot. All right. So now that I've got that all out of the way, let's get to a different topic because I wanted to talk about this. Um, I know this crowd here at Patriot Soapbox. Yeah. So let me type in the chat room. All right. So what I'm doing is I see it, but it is fine on my end. Zoom is fine. I don't know what to say. So anyway, all right. So I'm going to continue doing the show for the people watching the video later, for the people over at X, for the people who are watching on Vaughn. Unfortunately, Rumble is having its issues. But and hopefully the feed fixes on Rumble. If not, once again, you know, once again, for later. All right. So anyway, all right, get back to the point now. Interrupted by technical difficulties, I guess. So I know a lot of the crowd here at Patriot Soapbox tends to have been um, they began with their association, their agreements on things like Q and certain conspiracy theories, whatever. When it comes to Q, I was not one that was necessarily following every word. I was not necessarily a QAnon believer, but wasn't necessarily not. My mom was. My mom, what I knew, what I heard Q talking about, I got from my mom. I mean, she watched, X-22 and a couple of others, that would report on this stuff. My mom was all over it, and so I didn't necessarily reject, but I didn't necessarily fully. And I go into most things with a certain level of cynicism, and so I understand this about the Patriot Soapbox audience. And there are things that the Patriot Soapbox audience and I agree on 1000%. Some things we might not necessarily see eye to eye. One of the things I love about the Patriot Soapbox audience is it doesn't matter. They want to hear the truth. And if they think that the truth I believe to be the truth isn't the truth, then they'll take it with a grain of salt, or they might look into it or whatever. So, and so now that said, one of the people also that I sometimes have agreements and disagreements with, agree with them constitutionally 99% of the time, but there are certain things we don't necessarily agree on when it comes to the degree of things, the variances, and so forth, is Warhamster. Warhamster is a good friend of mine. Absolutely love Warhamster. When he's on here, I'm sure you guys get all excited because he's fantastic. He used to be a student of mine. I used to teach Constitution classes in Southern California. And Mr. Dynamic says, I knew nothing about Q before PSP. I did, but like I said, it was because of my mom. But anyway, so Warhamster and I used to teach classes in Southern California on the U.S. Constitution, and he would attend my classes. And I'm the one that kind of got him to not be so shy in front of the camera. Now you can't keep him away from the camera. He's always been, when it comes to social media, I've got a one sentence answer for you, buddy. He's always been good at that. When I first met him, believed a lot more conspiracy theories on a lot more stronger angle than he does now. Maybe because he looks into more. So they say now I look like a purple haze. No, I'm on my screen now. I'm looking pretty good. Okay. I also have Rumble up so I can watch the chat. And so I can see. But anyway, so let me get my screens back the way I want them here. So and there's certain things where it depends on degrees. For example, not that I want to get into this discussion, but it's like 9/11. You typically have two camps of 9/11. Uh, Either you believe the mainstream presentation of what happened, what it was, and all of you know, the towers fell because of the planes, and it was 19 Muslims because of Islam, whatever. Or you believe the opposite, which is it was an inside job. It was completely the government. It was, there were explosives that were planted. Da 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 da. I lie somewhere in between. I don't necessarily believe the full conspiracy theory, but I don't necessarily believe the full mainstream excuse. He, in the beginning when we first met, was more the mainstream. I'm sorry, the main conspiracy theory. He has tempered down a little bit. We see a few things eye to eye, but not all of it. That's one example, for example. Um, Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories I do believe and they became conspiracy fact. I tell people I'm a conspiracy factualist. I believe there are conspiracies out there. Um, and there's an awful lot of them. And many conspiracy theories of yesterday are headlines of today. So I'm not one to say, oh, if it's conspiracy theory, I refuse to believe it. But I am very cynical in the beginning. I test the waters. I want to know for sure. So one of the things that he and I don't necessarily always see eye to eye on is war. He has a saying, all wars are banker wars. And for the most part, I think he's correct. When you look back in history, a majority of wars were completely manufactured, designed, went the way they wanted, whatever. Some of the wars were necessary, and then the factions that we believe are out there took advantage of it. So not all of them, I believe, were designed and orchestrated by the dark shadow powers that are out there somewhere, but they took advantage of it. That's what the left does on a lot of things. It's like COVID. I'm not necessarily a believer that the left and the Chinese were hand in hand, planning it out from the very beginning for it to happen exactly as it did. But once it did get released by the Chinese and some American hands in it, they took full advantage of it the best they could to use it to their advantage for their narrative to experiment on us and so on and so forth. Once again, I'm not usually way over here, way over there. I'm usually somewhere in between, and I typically try to rationalize it through what evidence I know. So when it comes to war, once again, getting back to War Hamster and I, all wars make wars, and I don't necessarily think that in every war. I do believe there are times when war is necessary. I don't like war. I hate war. I'm an anti-war guy, but I'm not a peacenik anti-war kind of guy. When there is a necessity, then sometimes it's got to happen. Most of the time, war is a bad move, and we've seen the consequences of that. Sometimes it's a bad move, but you don't have a choice. You have to get into it because of certain reasons. Sometimes it was the right choice. So my point is, I'm not necessarily a warmonger, not necessarily a peacenik. I don't like war. I hate war, but I see it sometimes necessary. Probably more often than Warhamster would. Now, I have done a lot of studying of certain things in my life. And one of the things that have studied a lot, are different religions. Part of the reason is just because of my own background. My great grandfather was number two in the Mormon church under Brigham Young. He and Brigham Young got into an argument over the Mormon bank. Brigham Young excommunicated my great grandfather. Then he wrote a book against the Mormon church called The Lights and Shadows of Mormonism. If you want to look it up, Josiah Gibbs. So there's always been a curiosity about the Church of Latter-day Saints because of that. My co-host, Dennis, on my radio program is Mormon. I've had Mormons in my life. I was raised in the Baptist church. And I have a belief system that's very similar to what I was taught. My wife grew up as a Catholic. Catholicism has always interested me. the different Protestant religions, what came out of Reformation has always interested me. I've looked into the Orthodox churches and I've studied Islam because religion fascinates me for no other reason other than there's a lot of religions around me in my life and it fascinates me. And so I have studied Islam. I own 2 Qurans, not because I believe anything that these knuckleheads believe, but because, as for the same reason Jefferson owned a Quran. If you're going to have an adversary, you need to understand your adversary, right? The art of war, know your enemy, right? And so and so I've studied Islam for that reason. I believe I'm a firm believer, and this is my belief, and you can accept it, you can reject it, you can be mad, you can not be mad. I really don't care. I believe that Islam is the ultimate counterfeit religion that Satan wanted on this planet. Christianity, Jesus Christ died on the cross for your sins, and Islam, you die for your you die and shed your own blood, killing an infidel, and that's your sure way to heaven. It's a counterfeit. That's one example. So I'm very critical of Islam. One of the things about Islam that is especially, boy, that Ginny bot just keeps saying the same thing over and over. It's definitely a bot. Either that or as an individual, it keeps going paste, paste, paste. Yeah, I don't have control of kicking people out of there, so maybe the Ginny bot needs to be kicked out. But anyway, of the chat room. Anyway, all right, so I'm watching history. I have my opinion about Islam, and one of the things that I was going to tell you was one of their ideas, and this is, I think, the Shiites, if I remember properly. I've read all this stuff, but sometimes I don't always remember some of the details as I get older. Sometimes details try to elude me. Just as long as I don't become Biden, I should be okay. If you see me, standing there confused and chasing ice cream trucks, running out into traffic.
I hope not.
I hope not, she says. But anyway, so one of the things that's especially disconcerting is this idea, and I think it's just the Shiites that believe this. It's from the Hadiths, I believe, is the idea of the 12th Imam. And the idea behind the 12th Imam is that there's this Imam who's buried under the ground that will rise again, kind of a Jesus Christ type scenario. But it gets weirder. And in order for that 12th Imam to rise again and take charge of Islam worldwide, there must be complete chaos, fire, craziness. It has to be, what Christians would consider Armageddon, I guess. Armageddon brings about, thanks Moanon, I'm working on getting it removed, says Moanon, thanks. The 12th Imam needs Armageddon. Christian Armageddon is not the end, it's the beginning for Islam. Once again, it's a great counterfeit Luciferian religion, satanic religion. I don't believe Allah is God. Even though they claim he's the Abrahamic God, I believe it's Satan. But they are worshiping Satan, I believe. That's my opinion. But anyway, so the 12th Imam comes out of the grave when the chaos is at its worst, Armageddon's at its worst, and it gets to the point where even the rocks cry out where the Christians and Jews are to be killed by the Muslims. And then even Jesus Christ returns, this is from their point of view, and points to where the Christians and Jews are to be killed, in other words, the infidels, by the Muslim warriors. And then after it's all over and all the opposition is dead, only Islam remains, and then it becomes a religion of peace because there is no opposition. So, Iran, being Shiite, these mullahs believing in the 12th Imam, their goal is complete worldwide Armageddon like chaos, death, fire raining from the skies. Now, again, I understand people like, whoa, necessary war. I believe Trump understands what I understand and has taken action. I normally don't like war. I was critical of Iraq, not because it was engaged, but because how it was engaged. So my attitude is when war is necessary, keep the keep the war part of it as small as possible. Do what you got to do, leave. That's always kind of been my attitude. We got, especially us, we got the technology. Now, after years of Islam infiltrating regions across the globe, Islam is in Europe now. Europe's falling. Now you're starting to see some pushback in Britain and France and Israel, not Israel. Boy, talking about a Freudian slip. Ireland, remember, because you had the beheading in the street, and I've heard that there's also some pushback going on in Australia and other parts of the world. Um, but because that's what they're all about. They're about infiltrating. They are Nazi Germany on steroids. Islam is. And so you've seen this infiltration across the globe, terrorism on the rise. The left has been sycophantically bowing submissively to Islam. And then you remember Barack Obama's deal with the pallets of money? It was a tribute. A tribute is basically it's like paying protection money to a gang. George Washington and John Adams both paid tribute to Islam. Gave them money to keep them from attacking our ships. They still attacked them, but they just didn't attack them so bad. And then Thomas Jefferson became president, says, I'm not giving you pallets of cash, boys. I'm sending the Marines and the Navy. And he did. Barbary Wars. That's what the Barbary Wars were. And after setting them back and getting them to agree to an agreement, a treaty, he made a deal with them. During Madison's presidency, they did it again. Why? Because it wasn't Jefferson anymore. They waited him out and then tested the waters with the next president to see if they could get away with this garbage and get the tribute. And Madison fortunately said, hell no. And he did the same thing Jefferson did, but faster and nastier. He just, boom. And then Islam did not test it with us for a long time. Then you get modern day America, where we are bowing to Islam and paying them tributes. And in the case of Obama, because I think he's partly Muslim, adheres to a lot of the Muslim whatever, finds them to be allies, whatever. And what does he do? He gives them a tribute. Doesn't tell you that's what it is. We only find out about the pallets of cash because people are paying attention that ought to be. And the treaty wasn't a treaty. It was just here, we'll give you this money. Just promise us you won't make bombs. Oh, yeah, we promise. They're liars. They're deceivers. If you read the attributes of Allah in the Quran, it's the same attributes of Satan in the Bible. The Prince of Lies. They don't use that terminology, but that's basically Allah. Allah is the Prince of Lies, the great deceiver, the conqueror, and the list goes on and on and on. So, Trump wants to make a deal. He'll make a deal. It'll be good maybe for a couple of years, and then they'll renege on it because that's what Islam does. And they'll test the waters with the next president. We get another Biden or Obama in there, and they will get their nuclear weapons, and they will start bombing because they want the chaos for the 12th Imam. They cannot be trusted. So when Obama was giving them the pallet of cash, those of us that weren't neck deep in leftist political swamp slime understood exactly what was going on. So now, how do you then avoid this apocalyptic vision of a 12th Imam scenario? How do you keep them, and as a Christian, people say, well, Doug, this is the end times. Well, I won't say it is for sure until Damascus is completely destroyed. There's a biblical prophecy that Damascus will be, Syria, be so destroyed that no one will be able to live in it. That's a nuclear blast, in my opinion. I think Iran is going to launch a nuclear blast against Damascus. Maybe it might be somebody else. But once Damascus goes up into a nuclear fire, start looking to heaven because it's coming, man. It's coming. That's my canary in the coal mine when it comes to whatever is on the horizon in our future. You live like the Lord can return today, but you also live like it may not happen in your lifetime, right? You live with both. Anyway, so, so if I believe that that's not happening in my lifetime and I want America to do well, I want us to succeed, I want liberty to win, I am going to want to stop the apocalyptic vision of a 12th Imam scenario that the Muslims want to create. I had a friend of mine, Tim Curlin, he went by Loki online. For those of you who remember the Blog Talk Radio days, you may remember Loki. He was a very good friend of mine. He was kind of my constitutional mentor. And at that time, when I met him, and the madness was getting pretty bad with Islam, this was 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, something like that. He says, hey, man, the only way to stop the madness is completely eliminate the ideology behind the madness. Completely. Cut the cancer completely out. I agree. I don't necessarily believe that we need to go in there and just eliminate everyone on the planet that is Muslim, because Islam is the problem, not those particular people. They are the problem because they practice it. But I believe inside that horrible ideology are good people who wish I believe that there are still people who believe in Islam who God is calling to them. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who is one of those people. I sat in the backyard of this friend of mine, and his home is absolutely wonderful. He lives up kind of the hills of Corona overlooking Lake Matthews and the mountains in the distance. It's beautiful. My friend that I was visiting has been a supporter of what I do for many years. Advertised on my show, Constitution Radio and KMET. He's leaving that because he's retiring. So he's not going to be funding my radio programming anymore. That's the reason why my last episode on KMET will be July 4th. Then I will have no more AM FM radio shows. I ended the ones in San Diego recently. That's the reason why I do the Mr. Constitution Hour shows on Rumble now. And he was born in Iran. He was a young man, grew up in Iran. He was taught the Muslim way, though he never considered himself Muslim. He says I was a non-practicing Muslim because in Islam, in Iran, especially since the revolution, you had to be Muslim by law, right? Be turned in. He became a navigator. You know, when there's a plane, right? You have the pilot and the co-pilot, and they have that third guy. That's the navigator, right? That's what he did for a living for Iran, for an Iranian airline. And matter of fact, he tells a great story about one time when he was in Tokyo on a flight, but they had a long, layover because unlike American airlines, the plane doesn't fill up and you leave immediately. There's there's a lag before you have enough whatever. He wound up leaving Iran in 1982, 3 years after the Islamic Revolution. And once he was in America, he went to school. And actually, he had been going to college before that. He had come across to America a few times to go to school, college. So he kind of, he spoke English because he's in aviation. English is the aviation language. And he married his college girlfriend, blonde, white woman, became a Christian, and he established a thriving private business. And that thriving business was what was advertising on my radio program. But like I said, now he's retiring. And so he sat in his chair and he's telling me about his recent heart surgery. And the topic of Iran came up. And I asked him, I said, hey man, I've been wanting to ask you about what you think about what's going on in Iran. Since he's originally from Iran, he's still got family there. He doesn't dare tell his own mother that he became a Christian because when he visits her in Iran, he doesn't want to be turned into the authorities. And he says to me, hey, man, don't get me wrong. I love Trump, but he's being too soft on Iran. The only way to solve the problem is to kill every member of the Islamic regime, kill every leader, kill every one of them. Now, I kind of believe the same thing because, like I said, you got to eliminate the ideology. But when he said that, it was kind of whoa, man. I mean, I think it, I don't say it. He said it. And he's from Iran. He was born and raised there. He came here as I think he was in his mid to late 20s when he came here. And Sons of Liberty says, heavy, Doug. Yeah, no kidding. This is the same guy who told me years before that, many years ago, that the Persians in Iran hate the Arabs for bringing Islam to Iran. That Christianity is the fastest growing religion in Iran. His whole family's still in Iran, and there's one person in his whole family he could talk freely to when he's there, and that's one of his uncles. He trusts his uncle. Nobody else in his family, including his own mother, might turn him in if they knew he was a Christian and if he talked about it while he was there. And the thing about this ideology is it is a disease. The Islamic ideology is not a religion. It's an ideology that's being packaged as a religion, and people have fallen for it. And I feel so bad for those people who have fallen for it. I want them to reject it and come, if not to Christ, something other than that. Islam is, I have nothing positive to say about Islam. Japan didn't surrender during World War II until we dropped 2 atomic bombs. They didn't truly become an ally until General Douglas MacArthur made sure that their ruling system was dismantled and a free market economic system truly took hold in that country. Germany didn't surrender until their country had been leveled, flattened into fields of rubble, and the entire leadership was surrounded in Berlin with no escape, and most of them either killed or committed suicide. The reality is, when bad guys are on the march, Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, fascist Italy, or Islam, or the Soviet Union, or whatever, the only way to stop the infestation of their destructive totalitarian ideology is to eradicate it. And I hate to sound so, because like I said, I'm not a war guy. I served in the Navy. I don't want my brothers in arms. I don't want members of the American military dying on some field for some other country. I don't like it when we get involved in things militarily. But when you have an ideology that believes in the 12th Imam, that bringing mass destruction of like Armageddon, the fire like rain falling from the sky in order to get their global caliphate with the rise of a 12th imam, when you have that kind of thinking and they're on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon, yes, it's necessary. It is a necessity. That is, I'm sorry, man. And so I 1000% agree with what Trump has done. And every time he's asked, his first words out of his mouth is Iran is not getting a nuclear weapon. And I get the nervousness, man, because Bush's war in Iraq went horribly wrong after it was all over and while it was happening. And the term regime change has become something to fear as something that's doomed to fail. I get it, man. I understand we don't like this idea because just because a dictator is dead doesn't mean that the ideology is dead. It doesn't mean that the problem is gone. Or it doesn't mean that something just as bad or worse may step in and grab the reins. And Islam kind of reminds me of the progressive Democrats, communists, the Borg from Star Trek. This single mind group think system. And the danger remains until the governing creed of Islam's authoritarianism, disguised as a religion, as long as it remains intact, the danger is there. Now, our sensibilities shudder when we think about that. I bet you there was a bunch of you, when I said what I said, went, whoa, Doug. Because, as Americans, I mean, we have certain sensibilities. We don't like saying things like that. We don't like the idea that in order to shorten the war and save lives, we had to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan. That really shudders our sensibilities. When I first said this around my wife's like, whoa, Doug. We had a long talk about it. And Shadow says, just like the C word. Yeah, exactly. Talking about cancer. You got to cut it all out. And I mean, normally, I mean, let me back up here. So nobody loves war, well, except for maybe some real crazy people. Nobody wants to see people killed for any reason unless you're completely out of your mind. The thought of someone saying something like kill them all is reserved to fictional war stories, you know, uh, Starship Troopers. Our thoughts about mentally damaged minds that have PTSD so bad they can't see the horror in what they are saying. Biblical passages that we consider to be quite challenging when viewed through the eyes of modern sensibilities. But the reality is, the only way to end the horror is to, for lack of a better way of saying it, completely and thoroughly end the horror. All of it. I'm a firm believer of that. I mentioned the Bible a second ago. Let me tell you the story real quick, and because it kind of ties into this. So in Israel, if you remember the story of Moses, right? And he leads Israel out of Egypt. 40 years they wander in the desert. Moses does not get to go into the promised land. Hope I'm not ruining your story for you. She's reading a book about Moses now. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I'll run the ending for her. The conquest of Canaan was under Joshua's leadership. And it represents one of the most challenging moments in history. When Israel entered the promised land, God commanded the destruction of the Canaanite people, including women, children, and even animals. Look it up, Joshua 6:21. And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkey, with the edge of sword. From God's point of view, the command was a necessary one. The Canaanite idolatry was so exceptionally corrupt, so disgusting, so horrible. I mean, it involved practices of child sacrifice, It's like if you heard the stories of Moloch, and it was this, statue with these metal hands and they had fire underneath and they would put the baby in the hot hands and the baby would literally burn to death in those hands. Sickening child sacrifice, ritual prostitution, all associated with their deities, Baal, Moloch, Astaroth. And these practices had corrupted the entire Canaanite culture. They had been given a chance through time to turn away from it, and they didn't. And the corruption, the entire culture was so bad that God deemed that complete destruction was necessary. God had shown patience towards these nations for over 400 years. He allowed them time to repent before Israel's conquest. The destruction served dual purposes. It was both judgment against the Canaanites' extreme wickedness and protection for Israel from becoming drawn into these corrupt practices. The concept of herem, Herem, the Hebrew term translated as utterly destroy, is central here. This wasn't merely warfare, but a religious act where everything was devoted to God, either through the destruction or consecration. Israel was meant to be a witness nation to surrounding peoples. And I believe that about America. I believe we are to be a witness to the world. The incomplete conquest eventually, because they didn't do as God, they did not completely destroy everything. And eventually it led to Israel's spiritual downfall during the period of the Judges, where they were repeatedly drawn into the Canaanite religious practices. They wound up doing the same stuff. Isn't that what we're doing now in today's world? I mean, the anti-Israel attacks is even bleeding into many of my allies now. This is Islam that's launching this stuff. The same battles exist today. Modern Christians are in a spiritual battlefield. And just as Israel needed to completely remove physical threats to maintain spiritual purity, believers personally, us individually, we need to eliminate spiritual influences that would compromise our faith. Right? The old saying, you become who you hang around. So you don't hang around those who are not right to hang around, right? We may live in the world, but we must not be of the world. J. Vernon McGee, I'm a huge J. Vernon McGee fan. My wife and I are listening to Through the Bible every night. She didn't even know who J. Vernon McGee was. So I introduced her, and now we listen to it every night. And J. Vernon McGee pointed out, if you have 1 foot on a galloping horse that is of God, and 1 foot on a galloping horse that is of the world, eventually they will part ways, and you'll need to make a decision. And that's the way I see it. So when President Trump talked about the potential of utter destruction of Iran, I believe the threat was sincere, because we are dealing with an ideology that believes prophetically it cannot be destroyed, and that mass chaos is the recipe to bring about their glorious end of the world scenario that results in the rise of a worldwide caliphate. But at the same time, my American sensibilities care for the people who have been fooled by Islam. So I don't want the utter destruction. I want the people who still have the opportunity to leave Islam, to see the truth, to have that opportunity. So how do you utterly destroy the ideology in Iran, but not just utterly destroy Iran? And you got to realize that the Islamic leaders there and the Muslim Islamists, as we like to say, they believe in the will of Allah. So you have to convince them that it is outside the will of Allah to continue to fight for the moment. Otherwise, they're not going to stand down. And even if they do, it's a lie. They say, "Oh yeah, we're done. No, you got us." No, they're just going to wait it out until the next person comes along, and then they'll do their thing. But so you have to put the fear of utter destruction in them, and Trump understood this. That's the reason why he was saying, "Hey, I'll turn the place into a parking lot." He understands that if You're going to be able to get these people to be willing to come to the table. They've got a fear that, I mean, you're going to blow the whole place up. And giving them a pallet of cash and saying, now, guys, don't cross the line in the sand, ain't going to do it. It's the reason why they didn't give a garbage about what Biden and Obama said. There was no fear. But they truly fear that Trump is willing to just turn the place into a glass parking lot. Think about it, Sand. Now, from their point of view, it's going to be temporary. They fear that he'll do this to them. They're coming to the negotiation table, we hear. But what they're going to do is they're going to wait, they're going to dig in, they're going to regroup until the leadership of their enemy changes. Trump's term will eventually end a couple years. And the presence of people who think like him will eventually end. And then they'll get another Biden or another Obama in office and they can resume their atrocities. I believe that President Trump understands that stark truth. And that is why recently, to the horror of those who hated the Iraq war scenarios, what happened afterward, he used the term regime change. People went, no, not regime change. Well, I mean, that's necessary. Thank you, Cold Steel, for jumping in on Tinger there. And Chris, thanks. I'm not able to type right now, and I don't want to respond right now because I want to finish what I'm talking about because I got like 12 minutes left. Regime changes is a term we don't like because it was a complete disaster in Iraq under Bush. It was a complete disaster in Libya under Obama. Regime change isn't what we want. We want ideology change. We want to cut the cancer out. Regime change was necessary in Germany, Italy, and Japan after World War II. Based on Trump's assessment, the term regime change for Iran is not the same thing as the failures in Libya and Iraq and places like that. For Iran, it is an appropriate way to approach the problem. And with the successful military campaigns that we've seen in Iran so far, the leadership is so up against a wall. They are finally claiming they're willing to negotiate and sign an agreement. They can't be trusted. Their whole ideology is about deception. But for the time being, the deal Trump is presenting will have to do. The good news is when they try to renege on the deal, even a little bit, as long as Trump is in office, there will be an appropriate response. If we wish for the deal to last beyond Trump, there must be a full and complete regime change, ideology change. There must be an eradication of the mullah's rule in Iran. The regime must be completely gone. And as in the land of Canaan, if even a small piece of that old hardline Islamic way of thinking remains, Iran will rise up as a problem again at some point in the future. It won't completely eliminate Islam's sick and twisted ideology spreading as it is, but at least take out some of the bite that Islam has with its number one source of funding for terrorism broken like an obedient stallion. But let's not be fooled. Let's remember what we're dealing with. Victory is not achieved unless there is complete and thorough eradication of the ruling ideology, not merely the removal of some of the rulers who enforce it. And this now gets back to my friend who I was sitting with, the guy who was born in Iran. Right now, Trump's like, well, I think the ruling, Ayatollah is talking to us. Eradicate them. Don't merely remove some of the leaders and then make deals with the rest of them. All of them, as my friend from Iran that I originally talked about, he explained, all of them have to be gone. Period. I mean, like we've read about the complete denazification of Germany after World War II and the complete change in style of government away from the ruling emperor in Japan with a full injection of a free market system. Iran's leadership must be completely dismantled. Islam must be removed from any part of the ruling structure, and a purely free market economic system must be installed in Iran. I'm not talking about the Bush doctrine of spreading democracy. I'm not doing that. I think that's the stupidest thing. I'm talking about the eradication of a regime that is harmful, not just to the region, not just dangerous to the world, but an unconditional. But we must have an unconditional surrender that comprehensively dismantles every aspect of the former ruling ideology, full removal of the incomplete ruling class. You pull the weed out by the root with nothing remaining intact. If there's a little bit of root left in the ground, the root will grow back and you'll get an even larger weed than before. Right? In Iran, the same thorough removal of the former regime is beyond necessary. Yeah, but Doug, is it really our business? If they got missiles that can reach the United States or Europe or Israel pointing in those directions, yes, it is. It is our business. And I think there needs to be war crimes trials for those who remain, who don't get killed, and then do like we did with the top leaders of the Japanese regime and execute them after they're convicted. History is a clear window pane to the truth. Be it biblical times or defeating 20th century totalitarian regimes, to ensure victory and safety from the rise of the regime again at some time in the future, the remedy is completely eradicating the regime and its ideology. We are dealing with an ideology in Iran that believes America is the great Satan, Israel is the little Satan, and that anti-American fervor of hardline Islamic religiosity has been the basis of Iran's ruling class for nearly 50 years. It mirrors Nazism in ways most of us don't even understand. The Grand Mufti from the Caliphate in the Middle East was one of the advisors of Adolf Hitler. Rottweiler, I'll give you an answer in a second. Let me wrap this up, and then I'll have a few minutes to answer your what you think the enemy is. If we leave any of the leadership that believes in that ideology alive and in place in Iran, it'll be a grave mistake. The Iranian regime has been a nationwide system of organized terrorism and has been, engaging in terror against the West for nearly 50 years. It is a cancer rooted deeply in the Iranian culture. Cutting out most of the cancer does not get rid of the cancer. Believing that remaining cancer understands it must behave does not eliminate the threat. As long as the mullahs and their IRGC has any footing whatsoever in Iran, the threat remains. The deal, I know Trump is a deal maker. The deal must not allow the ideology to remain in place in Iran. The lying and deceiving ideology of the Islamic regime must be eliminated, or it will rise again to be a threat, because it doesn't matter how good the deal is. They don't honor deals. They know only one thing: death and destruction to anyone who dares to believe differently than they do. So we got to eradicate all of it. Every last crumb. Otherwise, the war's not over. And it is far from over. Islam will come back in the region more vicious than it was before Trump began bombing them if we don't eradicate that regime and then continue to make sure that Islam doesn't play the game that it wants to play. Understand, I believe Iran is a part of the end time scenario. We're not going to get it all, but we got to at least try. Because if they rise again, they will not only be merciless against the West and Israel, but anyone or any country, even their Arab neighbors who dare to come against them during this current war. And I guarantee you, if we allow that ideology to remain in place, they will come against everybody. And they will soak the ground with the blood of their own countrymen for daring to protest against them in the first place. That's just my thoughts. All right, Rottweiler, before I run out of time here, I got about 2.5 minutes. Rottweiler says, I don't think the enemy for is Islam. Islam is just a proxy boogeyman for the globalist cabal who have been pitting us against each other through religions for centuries. So Islam is the enemy, and the globalist cabal is the enemy. Islam has been around a lot longer than the globalist cabal, and the globalist cabal has been around longer than them. And that sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. The globalist cabal appeared and disappeared. It went from a republic in Rome to a globalist cabal, Caesar supported empire. Then it died. And then the ideas of the barbarians, the Saxons, the limited government began to take hold, and then the Holy Roman Empire appeared. So that cabal has disappeared and come back. But Islam has remained constant, while their foothold has changed over time. Their plans, their ideology, their goals for the world are the same. They, the global cabal, leftists, whatever, of today, and Islam are allies because they have the same enemies. I've talked to leaders of both groups, and the attitude is once we get rid of the Christians and the Jews and this and that, blah, 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 and we have control, then we'll take over the other one. They tolerate each other until they get rid of their shared enemies. Then they turn against each other. That's the way they're thinking about it. Sons of Liberty, Islam is not compatible with American principles. Exactly. Cold Steel, the Islamic Waffen SS. My uncle during World War II in the African Desert Campaign ran into them there. I am not surprised. Donald Ray Link, leftists think they are using Islam to usher in socialism. The truth is Islam is using leftists to usher in Islam. Then they'll be eliminated. Pretty much, yeah. Let's see. Just scanning down these chat stuff before I turn it over to Chris here. Yeah, I think that pretty much all of it. So I do support the move in Iran. I support Trump. I trust Trump quite a bit. I think he is the best president we've had since John Tyler in the mid 1800s. I think the man sees things that most people don't see. And it's like I was telling my wife, I always talk about balance. You don't want someone who's too strong of a personality, they become an authoritarian, or too weak that they get walked all over. He's somewhere in between. He's firm, he's strong, but he doesn't step over the line. But you better not step on his toes either, because he will get you. And that's what I appreciate about him. All right, united we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. This has been a great show. So we had Platner, we had Islam, ideology, 2 topics. 2 hours, 2 topics. Man, I tell you what, For the Republic has never been so lucky. Didn't even do any wackadoodle news. Now, Alan, I'm thinking we'll be back next week. I probably won't. Father's Day. My wife's like, Father's Day? You're not broadcasting on Father's Day. So I'm going to tell you right now, I probably won't be here on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Happy Flag Day. Man, this town I live in, man, we're crossing the bridge and there's American flags. There's a flag for every service. There's the Gadsden flag. There's the POWMIA flag. I mean, what an awesome town I live in. It was so exciting to see that. Thanks for spending the time with me. I'm a minute late. Chris, it's all yours.
You're fine. You're fine. Did you know my pastor here in my area used to work with J. Vernon McGee down in Southern California
Really?
years ago. He died a couple of years ago in his early 90s.
Okay.
But yeah, he used to do some of Vernon's radio shows for him when he couldn't do
Okay.
his radio shows. So yeah, he was very, very close to Vernon, and he had nothing but respect for that man. He loved him. Pretty
Well,
awesome.
absolutely. Well, so I began listening to J. Vernon McGee after he passed away. He passed away in '88.
Right.
And I started driving a big rig like during the late 90s. And that's when I came across him. So it was at least 10 years after he passed away before I even started listening to him. And I thought he was still around. I thought he was still alive. I didn't know. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, this guy's great. I've got to learn more about him, And I started looking into it and he'd been gone for over 10 years. His shows are still on the radio. They
Yes.
still play
Yes.
this of him going through the Bible. If those of you folks that don't know who J. Vernon McGee is, look him up. You can find it online. All of his shows. We have
Yep.
a site that we go to and you can go to
ttb.org.
thank you, ttb.org, and then I go to a place called One Christian Voice or something like that. Also has all
Mhm.
of his shows.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah. And happy Father's Day to you all. Thank you for the happy Father's Day
Happy
wishes
Flag
coming. Thank
Day.
you, Sunny Daisy. Uh, two kids. One of them I want to, and the other one it's like, okay, kind of, because as a parent,
They kind of
and
even each other out.
yeah, well, they kind of do. We got seven grandkids. Let me say this real quick.
Wow.
My wife and I had our children very young, and we were talking about this yesterday. As a man, because we were young and we didn't get what we get now. I swear we
Hmm.
must have really messed these kids up, because we're arguing, whatever. We're like, you know what? Not that we're gonna do this, not gonna happen. But man, if we were to have a kid right now, that kid would be because we so got it. It's almost kind of like kind of a messed up thing, where about the time you finally figure out how to raise kids, your kids are raised.
Yep. Out the door they go.
So it's like,
Go
man, those
mess up
poor
somebody else's
kids.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody figures it out eventually. It's like
And and
you
and
only
and
have
then
so much.
And
Go
then,
ahead.
boys start to figure it out when they quit blaming everybody and they start looking inward.
Yes.
When they start self-reflecting, that's when boys finally figure it out. Unfortunately, it usually doesn't happen for most of us till our 40s or 50s.
Yeah, you
But
get there.
anyway, yeah. But anyway,
Oh
thank
my
you for the
goodness.
happy Father's Day wishes. Happy Father's Day to you who are fathers, and happy Flag Day to all of you.
Happy
Uh,
Flag Day.
yeah, today is the anniversary. Well, we're celebrating the anniversary of the first American flag in 1777. And actually, the first American flag wasn't that flag. We were flying the Grand Union flag before that, so
Hmm.
we actually had
Hmm.
that beforehand. But nonetheless, happy Flag Day. Have a
Yep.
happy show, audience. You guys are
You
awesome, and
have
don't
a happy couple weeks. Right?
during this program, everybody's saying, "Oh, this is glitching. That's glitching." I recorded this. This will go on my website,
Good.
douglasvgibbs.com/video.
Good.
It will be there either tonight or tomorrow morning. Depends on how long,
Great.
because it takes time to render and all sort of stuff, download and upload and whatever. But once I get it on there, it should be by tomorrow morning. If you want to watch the whole thing again, fast forward through it, watch the whole thing, whatever, it'll be there. Chris, you're awesome. Appreciate you.
For
I'm
you
sure if
guys.
I'm sure if Alan was here, he would say, "Have a great show," and he would thank all the patriots out there. You know who you are, right? I love it when he does.
Sure.
He, he has such a unique way of doing things, and I
He
absolutely
does.
appreciate him.
Yeah.
But anyway, have a great show.
Thank
Happy
you.
Flag Day. Happy Father's Day.
Happy
Probably
Flag Day
won't
and
see you guys.
Father's Day to you.
Probably won't see you guys Sunday, but I will be on the air on Patriot Soapbox Friday. Remember, I'm on from 2 to
Friday.
4 Pacific on
Yep.
Fridays as well. All right, Chris.
Cool.
Have a great show.
Have a great couple weeks, you guys. Bye bye, Virginia.
Bye.
Love you guys. Bye bye.
Thanks.